We are live.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Kate Mata, and I am the director of Reboot Talent. I hope that everybody can hear and see me okay. We are gathered here today on the day after International Women's Day and Women's History Month to discuss a few impactful topics with a panel of industry leaders and experts. The 2022 theme this year is Break the Bias, and I challenge every single person on this call to be a part of the movement by calling out gender bias. This event has been organized by Reboot Talent, a program powered by Mindlance in partnership with Reboot and Reboot Her in India. Mindlance is a workforce solutions organization that specializes in contingent labor and direct hire placement, and Reboot Talent connects companies with diverse and underrepresented returning talent across different domains and advocates for those whom a traditional hiring model excludes. Today, to discuss these important topics, we are honored to be joined by the experts in our industry. So I'm going to introduce the first couple people of our panel. First, we welcome Rubina Gonsalves. Rubina is an IT director in the Office of CIO. She leads the field demand for VMware on VMware globally. She is a patent strategy within the IT and innovation programs, and she is the Woman at VMware co-chair for APJ and leads different diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies within the CIO group. She has over 19 years of experience that includes working in Wipro and Citrix in the past. She has used product telemetry and sales data to increase revenue across multiple localization markets. She has a strong background in program management, strategic planning, risk management, and data compliance. She's a passionate DE&I champion and has driven multiple strategic programs like TARA to support women in tech. She has a master's in software engineering from BITS Pilani, and we are very excited to have Rubina in the first session of the Equal Half Genderlogue today. So big welcome to Rubina. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Kate.
Yeah. Let's also give a big welcome to Stacie Wilk, Executive Leadership Recruiter at Oracle. She is a technology industry veteran. Stacie's expertise is in recruiting top-tier executives. Before joining Oracle in 2013, she spent 8 years at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise supporting executive recruiting for the infrastructure, software, and service lines of business across both product and commercial roles. And at Oracle, she partners and recruits talent across marketing, consultancy, and sales. Stacie also has previous experience leading diversity-focused talent acquisition and management strategies. So the conversations that we are having today are right within her wheelhouse. And I'm very looking forward to hearing more from Stacie. My co-host for today is the leader of Reboot Her, Anupama Kapoor. Anupama is an equity and inclusion strategist with over 2 decades of experience across different industries and verticals in the US, Hong Kong, as well as in India. Anupama leads Reboot, which is an equity and inclusion consultancy that works with organizations to create equitable and inclusive work cultures. She has a master's in women's study from SNDT University, Mumbai, and Anupama's passion for enabling women economically led her to founding Reboot Her, a pan-India career community for returning women professionals. She mentors and coaches the community to help them get back to sustainable and thriving careers. So I will pass the baton over to you, Anupama.
Thank you so much, Kate. A very good morning to everyone who's logged in from North America, and a very good evening to all those tuned in from the subcontinent. Even though it was yesterday, a very happy International Women's Day to all of you. As you all know, March 8th is a day we honor the women's social, economic, political, and cultural achievements globally. It's also a day where it's a call to action for accelerating gender equality. This year's theme is Break the Bias, as Kate just shared, and whether unconscious or intentional, bias does make it harder, makes it difficult for women to move ahead. So it gives me great pleasure. It's really a privilege, really, to be able to host an Equal Half Genderlogue on with such an accomplished panel on such an important day. Thank you so much for being here. To give context to this discussion, which is primarily around women who are aspiring to return to work, and we also call them women returners in this discussion. I think it will be nice to share a little bit about myself because there is a similarity in the trajectory. So very quickly, I took a career break many years ago because I had to leave a demanding career, which I was very happy with, to be able to spend time with the toddler who I wanted, to be with. I was not able to balance the two at that time. And I use the word balance because work integration wasn't a thing back then. Today we talk a lot about work integration and the merging of the two, but it wasn't possible back then. And I wanted to be the master of my own time, and that kickstarted my entrepreneurial journey and subsequently Reboot Her, a pan-India career community for mentoring, coaching, and upskilling women, essentially enabling them for sustainable careers back to long careers, sustainable careers, so that they can thrive in their careers. Through speaking with so many women, hundreds of women, I also realized that it was not just the women who needed the help, it was also the men who needed to be equipped, so to say, to be able to embrace women returners working around them. And that led me to launch Equal Half, a safe space, a forum for engaging men in the gender equality discourse. So through research, interventions, and conversations like today, we hope that we can increase awareness and create more allies in our journey. So without further ado, I will quickly introduce this panel so that we can dive right in. We have Shikha D'Souza right here, an HR professional, an accomplished HR professional and consultant. She has an MBA in HR from UTS Sydney and has 15 years of experience working with organizations like Coca-Cola, Vodafone, Nigel Wright, and Reckitt Benckiser. In all things HR and talent acquisition, really. She took a break in 2021, and she's going to throw some amazing insights, give us some amazing insights into her journey and how it becomes pertinent to this discussion. Suraja Kishore, the CEO at BBDO India. Prior to this role, Suraja has worked with McCann Erickson, Publicis, and Lowland Tas. A graduate of Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Suraja has worked with Unilever, Visa, Marico, Procter & Gamble, Nestle, Godrej, Tata, Idea Cellular, Citibank, Ford, WhatsApp, and many more such brands on some iconic advertising campaigns. I'm sure a lot of you will relate to some of these campaigns, like Ariel's Share the Load for P&G, What an Idea, Sir-G for Idea Telecom, and It's Between You for WhatsApp. Besides this, when he's not working, Surja is a long-distance runner. He finds running meditational and shares his thoughts while running with the world on Instagram through his handle SK Running Thoughts. So do follow him there. A very warm welcome to you, Shikha and Suraja. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So jumping on to the first question of the day, Shikha, for you. You have a very rich career in human resources and talent acquisition with big brands. In fact, in 2020 and 2021, Reboot Her partnered with your organization for the Return to Work program, and you were the program manager. So I'll be honest that it was a bit of a shock for me when I learned last year that you were planning to quit. I don't really want to be intrusive. When I was writing this question for you, I thought I don't really want to be intrusive and ask you, why did you quit, Shikha? But it will benefit this discussion tremendously if you can share your perspective and also the other multiple perspectives which you can really throw some light into, because you've been an HR professional yourself, you've been an HR business partner, and most importantly, you managed a return to work program for an organization where you were interfacing both the outside world, which is the candidates, as well as the internal stakeholders. Over to you.
Firstly, thank you so much for this opportunity. I think when you get out of work, a big part of you kind of gets away from you, which is your identity professionally. So when you're invited for a forum like this, that professional identity gets back kicked in, and it's really delightful. So thank you for that. One of the things I wrote on my LinkedIn when I was posting this event was that the first step to accepting that there are biases and then trying to break them is to be honest with yourself and to be honestly having that communication with the outside world. Many times that honesty can come across as being brash or aggressive or rude. But when you're honest and you start talking about the issues, you do something about them. where I actually have taken twice over breaks in my career. And both times it's been to balance my professional and my personal life. Many times failing at that balance and therefore saying, you know what, I'm going to take a break because I have the confidence that I can come back from that break. In 2021, the reason I took the break is because COVID hit us, and I have two toddlers at home, both of whom had to do online studies, could not navigate the computer themselves. So, all I could do for the entire year of 2020 was run between three laptops, my own and then two others. And I could see that nobody was benefiting. I was suffering at work because I was working insane hours to try and catch up. My kids were suffering, especially the one who was going to nursery, starting off his education online. And so I took the decision to take a break. And it's strange that I did that because I had just come back from a break. When I had gone to United Kingdom, had my two babies, both in very quick succession. So again, taken a break because I had to look after them in the UK without any help. So I think coming to your question, it's not really very personal to me. I think it's a challenge that so many of my friends are facing, so many of my colleagues are facing, and COVID brought that bias so much into our face that many women like me didn't have the opportunity to take the decision, but the few that did just said, you know what, I'll pack up the laptop at work, focus on the children, and when and if COVID settles down, I'll relook at my life. And so I think that's what really happened with me. Why I say that the biases came up startlingly in front of me was because when I was at home and the laptop wasn't working, and my husband and I were both on calls, my kids just thought it was okay to come and tell me that their laptop wasn't working. Mama, come and fix it. They just did not instinctively disturb their father for that, the laptop to be back on. And therein lies, the reality that we're all in this environment where consciously or subconsciously the biases just start coming around from the ecosystem. And does quitting a job and looking after the family help the biases? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But it just gave me a moment to say, at this time, at this point, my family is more important. And when COVID settles down, which it has, so I'm back to looking for a job. So that's the circle of life. And I don't know if I've answered your question, but that's really what happened and why I took the break.
Super. I did also ask you a little bit about the bias in terms of managing the return to work program and the internal stakeholders and the returner bias there.
Sure. And I'll definitely talk about that because that program was very close to my heart. It was also a program in a very traditional FMCG organization that hadn't done something like this before. They hadn't actually opened their doors to women who had taken long career breaks to come back. I think, to be honest, the biases really start from the fact that when the CV lands up on the table, the first point is from the hiring manager, but this person hasn't worked for 5 years. The industry has moved forward. How are we going to integrate this person? So that's the first question that comes up. Then the second question and the second issue that happens is, especially in a market like India where talent is abundant, talent is cheap, and talent is available, the question comes, oh, but you know what? I can find someone who's already working to do this job. So then, the real responsibility lies with the organization and the leadership in the organization to say that, for some period of time, we're going to put this point important for everybody, that certain roles, certain jobs, certain areas will focus on getting people back to the workforce. And so the biases can only be dealt with communication and can only be dealt with collaboration. And that's what we did. So the biases we faced, we broke them down by communicating with the managers, by also communicating with the outside world, and by equipping people on both sides with the tools to be able to integrate. So the people who were returning back had programs that they attended for a period of 6 months to get them back into the workforce, because that's a challenge all by itself, and that's a different discussion altogether. And the managers were also going through programs where we were sensitizing them that it's not about gender, it's about returning back to work. And that could be any gender, and that could be any strata and any community. So it's just sensitizing yourself that this person has not been in work for a few years. It's a different ball game. It's a different life space. So how can we support that person? So Anupama, to answer your question, these were some of the biases we faced. And this is how we really worked around it. The program was successful. You partnered with us and we got few people on board. And some of them are still working with the organization. So I think that's how we worked through the entire process.
Thanks for sharing that, and also very candidly your own story. Kate, over to you.
Yes, thank you so much for your insight. I mean, it's really interesting. I know that we live in different countries, but the biases are the same here too, you know? I mean, these are global issues that we're all talking about every single day. And so it's really just impactful to be able to hear your experience. So thank you for sharing that. Stacie, so question for you, because I know you've partnered with returnships before and you have done a lot with diversity, equity, inclusion within your role in talent acquisition and recruiting. What would you say are, whether it's a returnship or just companies trying to retain women during the pandemic and moving forward post-pandemic, what are some factors that should be included or considered for tailored retention programs for women? You know, what does leadership and organizations need to keep in mind to make sure they're retaining women moving forward?
Thanks, Kate. Can you hear me? Okay, good. Wasn't showing I was off mute. So I need to first of all agree with Shikha on her comment that you know, the bias is real. I happen to have not had school-age children at home during the shutdown, but I had a husband that suddenly had to work from home, and you know, that created a whole different set of issues, but the bias was real, right? So, you know, I think the thing to remember is that the Great Resignation has created organizational impact that crosses gender, racial, generational lines. But that the hard reality really is that in most households, and I know there's lots of wonderful partners out there, but in most households, you know, women or the maternal figure do still carry the lion's share of the caregiving burden. And pre-pandemic, that looked like maybe shuttling kids around to, you know, baseball games or dances or whatever. But post shutdown, it became a whole different animal with trying to educate your children at home, caring for parents maybe who, you know, couldn't be on their own. So I think fundamentally there are kind of two areas that organizations need to stay focused on. One is continuing to foster a culture of empathy and flexibility that really starts at the top. We learned real quick what empathy as a leader looked like during the shutdown, and, you know, also learned that most of us could actually be successful working from home given the right amount of flexibility, young school-age children scenarios notwithstanding. But I think, you know, we need to continue to ensure that respect for work-life balance is maintained. It is supported by leaders inside of an organization. Boundaries are honored, because it's really easy to work around the clock when you don't have to stand up and move away from an office-based desk. I think for younger generations coming into the workforce in this environment, helping them learn how to build relationships via Zoom or phone. I happened to make a job change in the middle of the pandemic, and I've been now with Oracle for coming up on a year. See all of my colleagues on Zoom all the time, haven't met any of them in person yet, even through the interview process. So, you know, for an old vet like me, it's okay, I can make that work. But for a young kind of college grad or even returner coming back after a few years out of the workforce, that's a really hard thing to get comfortable with. And I also think our organizational focus now on providing mental health resources and, it's okay to not be okay, that needs to continue. And we need to continue to support women in the U.S., what we would call people of color, the generational groups in different ways through, good support for mental health resources at work. The other area is more systemic, and it's about examining your internal talent systems. Women in underrepresented groups tend to suffer more stress from, job conflict, right? How many people know of an organization where, a D&I council is being established and they want a woman to spearhead it, or a person of color to, to kind of be the voice of diversity and inclusion in a non-D&I aligned role, right? They still have to do their day job, and now they're trying to solve equity issues on their own behalf, or their own, kind of cultural or organizational behalf. I think it's really important that we become and we continue to build awareness around things like microaggressions and imposter syndrome in the workplace, and ensure that your talent management and promotion systems are focusing on transferable skills, supporting people who are raising their hands for stretch assignments so that imposter syndrome doesn't creep in because they don't feel supported as they're kind of moving across the career lattice. Check your interview and performance review processes for bias. Make sure that those processes are related only to the job at hand. Know who and how to define top performers and high potentials, and then create systems to nurture careers in both. And finally, I think the idea of sponsorship is so critical in organizational talent management right now. A mentor can be a sounding board, can be a coach, can help you think about your career as someone who's been there, done that. A sponsor is a leader inside of an organization who's going to get to know you as a top talent and then advocate for you when you're not in the room. Use their political capital inside of an organization to advance your career. As an executive recruiter, I see too many leaders who don't know their internal talent, don't invest the time in getting to know others across the organization, who it's not just skip level meetings, it's even further down. How are you creating, whether it's promotional or lateral, the opportunity for women to balance while still continuing to feel like they're being challenged and growing in their career, whether up or across the organization? And how do leaders inside of a company help facilitate that through sponsorship and active advocacy for that talent internally?
Thank you for that. You brought up a really interesting point in regards to some of the unpaid labor that can take place in D&I, especially in internal organizations. I think I hear about that a lot, especially here in the States, as after the civil unrest, just in general, that took place back in 2020, and every organization was jumping to create a DE&I department, and then all of a sudden you have all these women and people of color who now have all these extra jobs on top of the job that they're already doing, and there's no promotion, and things like that can be a little performative, right, from organizations. And I think hopefully we're at a place now, at least in the States, where people are kind of seeing through that, and companies are stepping up to either promote these people and whether it's pay transparency and being able to give them what they deserve, or making sure it's just more equitable across the department. So I think you brought up a really interesting point that I didn't even think about before, because that does primarily fall on women, especially those different types of HR functions. And D&I isn't always part of human resources, right? I mean, sometimes maybe those need to be completely separated things and completely separated initiatives. And so making sure we have somebody or having a sponsor in the room who can be able to talk through that would be really important. So I love that. That was really great. Stacie, one quick question for you. What do you think leadership forgets when it comes to retaining women? What do you think they miss?
Oops. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay. I think they miss the importance of male allyship. You have to fundamentally believe that a rising tide lifts all boats. And you will never have 100% of an organization behind that conceptually. But as leaders, as managers of people and teams that involve women and in the US, people of color, you have got to fundamentally believe in the power of allyship. And that shows up through sponsorship, through advocacy, through men becoming involved in women's ERGs and other groups that are there to support. And women can do a lot. We can't do it all. And I think that idea of empowerment and flexibility, and we don't need to necessarily all be managed by the whites of our eyes. And for those who are showing themselves to be able to be successful in kind of managing their own workload rebalancing, right? And not necessarily tethered to their laptop, whether at home or at work, 9 to 5 or whatever at work hours your office, identifies with, that flexibility, that empowerment, and that allyship for balance between work and life is, I think, critical to women and a lot of other people in the workplace, but women, in this context, absolutely. And I think a lot of companies do miss that.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, brilliant, Stacie. That actually leads us right into our next question. And interestingly, whether we are talking about returners or women in general or other marginalized and underrepresented communities, the key theme I keep hearing even in this discussion today is about bias. So now, what is bias? Now, as per behavioral science, all human beings are biased, whether we know it or not, whether they're intentional or unconscious, whether they're good or they're bad. They are these mental shortcuts that we use to help us make our decisions quickly every day. And they are usually based on our early years, as our conditioning, our socialization determining our identities. Now, we know that there are many gender biases prevalent in the society. We've all spoken about that so much and more. And these lead us to stereotyping different genders. Now, the key question, I know also that Suraj wants to talk when it comes to male allyship. So from your experience, Suraj, have you seen these biases manifest? And you're the only male representative on this panel today, on this Genderlogue today. Have you seen them manifest? If yes, how? And then the million-dollar question, which is my favorite since yesterday, is how can we break these biases?
Thanks, Anu. Let me just share a very personal story. I've not shared it ever on any platform. I think I had a daughter. I think she was born just an hour. Maybe a year. Yeah, it's been a year. Vama was my daughter's name, and I had taken a job after moving out of an academic role into a full-fledged advertising agency role, and somehow I was not liking that particular job. So here I am, a father, new father with a 1-year-old daughter. I don't like the job I'm doing, but now I'm struggling. I struggled for at least 2 months to decide, can I quit? Can a man quit not having to provide very clearly, consistently, without any job? What will my parents think? What will my wife think? What will my daughter think if she hears it when she grows up saying, my dad quit his job when I was just 1 year old? And this is a true story. Finally, I did take the call to quit for one most important reason. I was sucking at being a dad. I was sucking at being a husband to my wife who was trying to struggle between this transition, right? And that was the first time I experienced bias for myself. And that underscores me the point that I don't think bias has nothing to do with gender. It has to do with society. It has to do with culture. And I strongly believe that unless we get culture into the boardroom, we can't solve this. There are enough management frameworks of leadership, of gender inclusion. It's not working. For a simple reason that it has to do with culture rather than corporate. And unless we infuse that and actually demand for that culture to come into the boardroom and make it very clear that it's possible to actually talk about culture, because why, and what Kate said so right, I read about this research. Women across the world are only responsible for emotional maintenance of their marriage. I don't understand why. It's nothing to do with India. It has always been like that. When there is a birthday ceremony happening, why do we end up calling a woman to cut the cake and distribute it to everybody? How does it work? Why doesn't our mind function that time? Why doesn't it come easily for a boy to actually go and say, I will do it, even if he wants to do it? So my first important point, I think I've experienced gender bias personally. And I've grown up with two very close sisters who have grown me up and a daughter who's grown me up to be a better man. Every day I'm learning. When I come to these forums, I'm saying, OK, let me now figure out which of the bias I have I need to get rid of. Point number 2. Let me bring the context back to this society right now. We have gone through a pandemic, 2.5 years. It's worse than World War. After World War, United Nations was created. After pandemic, nothing is created. As if life is normal. Returning to work is being discussed exactly normally like we would have discussed without the pandemic. And we have been doing Share the Load campaign for Ariel, for PNG since 2015. When we were crafting this last year, the roles and the number of hours of women at work had increased. Everybody demanded their own sandwich, customized to their own taste, whilst he is already working. She's very comfortable saying, hey, just hold on, I have to give sandwich to my son, to my husband. But the husband who is working, he has a serious work to do. So my second point is, let's take the context into consideration when we are thinking about returning back to work. Actually, the entire civilization is returning back to work. And if you have to actually, this is the time, this is a great time to actually make it genderless. All of us are returning back to work. We're not clear. I have my creative heads who are not clear. Why should I come to work and come to office? Why can't I do it from home? I have mothers, new mothers who are like, hey, I'm investing too much time. Can I just come once a week? There are a lot of questions being raised over there. Now come to bias. For a long time, I was a copywriter, then I became an academician, then I moved into a strategy role, and then I moved into a business role. And I realized there's no column for empathy, there's no column for hope, and there's no column for gender inclusion in profit and loss statement. And that tells me, and I've been doing it for now 6 years in business role, and I'm very clear. Any agenda which you want to drive, which has to do with culture, it has to have a business case. And that's what I see missing in most of our conversation. It seems empathy, which is good to do, but not good for business. If empathy is not good for business, then brands wouldn't have been created. If emotional data didn't matter, then we wouldn't have paid X amount of dollars for buying that shit which we buy today. So the fact of the matter is, my last point is, when it comes to bias, when it comes to culture, when it comes to inclusion, and the moment in time we are staying in this civilization, we need to talk about business case for returning back to work. And it is genderless. Now let me tell you another story, which is again very personal. I was looking for a Mumbai operations head. When I became the CEO for BBDO, I had hired most of the new teams, but there was one position left, Mumbai operations head. I don't know why, maybe the noise in the market, in the environment. Hey, diversity, I'm not doing anything about diversity. I should have a diversity in my team. Everybody is a man. Okay, so Tom, CEO head talking. I must look for somebody who is not a man. Okay, women, but you know what? I have to deliver business results. She must be competent. I won't make a empathetic case just to hire a woman if she can't deliver a business case, right? So it was very clear to me, I'm still chasing a business case. I'm still chasing somebody competent. I'm not going to give negative marks or grace marks or anything like that just to have a woman on the table. There's this lady, absolutely great pedigree in terms of marketing and advertising. She took 3 years break to do painting. Her resume was lying in my bank, my inbox for 3 months. I couldn't muster courage to call her. Same bias. Will she really be able to up for it? This is different kind of world we are living in. She took a break after such an illustrious career. Maybe she doesn't want it easy. After 3 months of sitting on it, I don't know what happened. My heart said, meet her. She's very good. Her resume says she's pedigree. I met her. And she till date tells me that you walked into Starbucks with this very, why my hair kind of look. And I sat down on the table and asked her, I said, Priyanka, why do you want to join back? And she gave me one-line statement. She said, I've shrunk my canvas. I want to expand it again. That's it. That brings me to the most important point. We need to stop talking about work-life balance. Why do I say this? It seems like there's no life at work. As long as we recognize there's no life at work, we'll keep falling between these two. I'm all for work-life harmony. If I do greater work, I'm a great dad. I'm a great friend. If I'm a great dad, I'm a great employee. So I think I have personal experiences and more real stories needs to come in if we want to do something about this. And maybe my background is more into consumer insights, people, building brands. We are sucker for emotional data. That helps. There are real examples of people who have been hired. They will attract more people. Priyanka had 2 more people who had taken career breaks. I didn't decide that. She chose it. It's a chain reaction once the culture takes over. Sorry for these long winding stories, but.
No, not at all. Thank you so much for sharing these very, very interesting stories, and some of these are personal for you. For the benefit of everybody listening, I just wanted to quickly clarify that, of course, we've all done the business case on inclusion and gender, and it's almost like saying that baseline job is already done. And in fact, over the years, we've now moved from saying what is the business case of inclusion to saying, forget about the business case. It's the right thing to do to have a purposeful business, right? So that is on. That's one. When it comes to returning women in particular, the idea really is that throughout the world, whether it's the US or India, women's leadership representation is very, very poor. And it is only a fraction of the number of women that enter the workforce. So when women drop out of the workforce because of multiple reasons, if you hire women returners back, you are boosting your middle management, which leads to a healthier, faster talent pool for leadership in the future. So that's one good reason right there for you. Now, when we women, and I must defend this before I hand the baton back to Kate, when we talk about diversity and we talk about creating systemic, getting rid of systemic issues and having equity in organizations, we don't for a moment imagine that you will make it easy for us. We are all for merit. Yeah. And now the whole question around meritocracy is a different one, and probably we should take it up on another forum. But we are not saying that we want grace marks and hire us because we are women. So that message must go out to everybody. Yeah, over to you, Kate.
Thank you so much. So it's been really, really enlightening hearing every single person's point of view. I have one of our last questions is for Rubina. First of all, I need to tell you that I'm a tea drinker, and I love your little tea mug that you got going on. It is very, very cute. I'm all for a very clear see-through, whatever you got. I love it. So I'm going to ask you about where you got that after this call. But what's really wonderful about Rubina in general is that she works for an organization that has a return slip. So she lives this day in and day out. She's one of the people who helped initiate and start the strategic program TARA, which is a return to work program in conjunction by VMware and Women Who Code. And so they specialize in upskilling, and they provide free technical education on VMware products and technology that enables digital business transformation. And this helps women be able to get back into the workforce with ease and have the confidence and the skill sets they need to be successful. So Rubina, can you elaborate on the difference of impact between a structured and proactive returnship versus an ad hoc hiring program where you need women as they come?
Hey, thank you, Kate. And I loved both the stories you shared, Suraj. They were pretty amazing. And yeah, so Kate, I think there's a huge difference, and I would love to elaborate on how BM Inclusion Tara is so different from any ad hoc hiring program. So how we built it up right at the start was it was always a selfless program, wherein we targeted at upskilling women who want to return back to work, and the idea was to provide them free certification courses so that they can upskill themselves on the latest technologies. And the as a result, as an outcome, we set ourselves a huge target of upskilling 15,000 women, and so happy to say that in 3 years we are now at 17,500 plus women whom we have upskilled, out of whom 4,000 women have joined back working for different companies, even for our competitors. So, it's like we are preparing women for the workforce and they can join anywhere. And the advantage is that, it's not limited to a few requisitions or a few openings within VMware, but 4,000 is like a huge number, which we couldn't achieve if it was just a limited program intended to hire back into VMware. So the idea has always been, to make them capable, make them independent, and then they can go and join anywhere. And to even boost that further, what we have been doing is we have been partnering with multiple institutions, both government, NGO, and also learning partners. And these learning partners are now bringing in additional courses from various learning platforms like Aspire for Her, LinkedIn Learning, and She Loves Data. And that's adding to the richness of the course and content, the technical content that we are able to provide to women. In fact, we have recently also partnered with Intel in building content specifically for developers, women developers who are returning back to work. And the beauty is, there are a lot of latest content that is being offered along with administrative courses, and it's helping more women upskill. So I think, having a platform which can be leveraged and which can be grown and expanded has no limits. It has immense impact, and the possibilities are just limitless. Recently we have also started partnering with certain colleges, wherein we are looking to open up to graduates who have never worked. In India, a lot of women, soon after they complete their graduation, they tend to get married and they never get to see workforce, right? So we are trying to reach out to even them, and that population I can easily say is huge. So
that's outstanding. And, you mentioned what Anupama had just kind of mentioned before. It stretches beyond like, what's the business case, right? I mean, the business case would be you're upskilling these women and they can come work for your organization, and it's a very easy pipeline to do your own hiring, but you are empowering women for even your competitors to be able to go work for them. But ultimately that will make your organization stronger, the tech community around you stronger, and then that does enable helping everybody. So, doing it definitely pays dividends to always do the right things. That's really, really powerful to hear. Outside of like the actual technical upskilling, are there any other tools that you're providing with these candidates to help them transition back to work? Maybe like in the soft skills or anything along those lines?
Yes, there are a lot of soft skill webinars that we keep running in collaboration with our learning partners, and there are a lot of other resources and courses that are made available so that these women can get an opportunity to interact. And we also, I would say we also started a parallel program where it's known as VMware Nakshatra, as an outcome of which we are hiring women whom we know are maybe a 40 to 50% fitment for the job, but with the understanding that they will scale in a couple of months' time. And we take them, on a paid internship program for 6 months, and after which most of them prove to be, excellent at their job, and that's how they become, we convert them to full-time employees. So, yeah.
That's outstanding, and huge congratulations to the numbers that you guys have been able to deliver on. That is really, I mean, wow, it's very, very impressive, and you guys are making a really positive impact. So kudos to you guys for doing that work. I do want to let all of our attendees know that you can submit a question in the Q&A. We have a couple so far I want to be able to throw out to the group here. Our first question, and anybody can answer this, is how do we keep bias differentiated from the physical strength? I might need more clarification on what that question means. Yeah, we're all nodding. Okay.
So while you do that, I see one here very quickly, and I'm going to pose this to Suraj. This is really, it's about zero-sum game from the game theory, I think. The question really is that, the job market has a limited number of opportunities. And so far, we've, extensively focused on women, which is anyway taking away jobs, the same job pool, right? So it's taking away men's jobs. So and now if we add returner to the mix, the number of jobs available to men who are already in the workforce becomes even lesser. So is this a zero-sum game at the end of the day? Not an easy one.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think we'll get there a long time for that when we get zero-sum game. But I feel that what is interesting and what is going in our favor to pursue this initiative is when it comes to really brass tacks, I don't think it recognizes gender. There is no decision making which happens at a level which is responsible for business, responsible for corporate, responsible for profit, which recognizes gender and say, hey, you know what, men are losing, so therefore now let's balance it. Like you said, Danu, I mean, even this returning to work and what Rubina talked about, we need to build bridges so that they can upskill and get into the race. But I don't think anything is happening. In fact, in that notion that we can build a bridge so that could cross over is the notion that can scale the business actually. There can be somebody who will be contributing to. So in my experience, I would be actually biased and say it's kind of heartening that I find more women colleagues doing better, but I don't think it's against men because I equally find men colleagues who are really contributing. For instance, I have a friend who is doing business in Delhi and is doing extremely well. But I see very different qualities with Priyanka, who is running my Bombay operations. So I don't think it's about gender. It's more about personality. It's more about what they bring to desk. So I'm not seeing yet so much zero-sum game or any kind of battle there.
So it's more about what you bring to the table, your competencies and capabilities.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I hope that question's answered for you.
You're on mute.
I see another one here, and this is to again, Rubina or Stacie, you can both take this. Shikha had touched upon this earlier. This is more about recruiter bias. So what is the role of hiring manager bias in hiring of women returners? Do recruiters tweak their requirements based on what the hiring manager says? How do the recruiters also manage the internal stakeholder expectation in this?
So I think there's a couple of things, and just to build on what Suraja just said, what we're really after is diversity of thought. That's what drives innovation. That's what grows businesses. That's what creates more opportunity for all, right? What I have found as a recruiter, and admittedly, my recruiting career has been at the executive level, which I think tends to inherently be slightly less flexible than, kind of earlier career type hiring. But where I work with my leaders a lot is to try to kind of get them to apply almost an 80-20 lean type principle. If we can find, let's call it 80% of what you think you must have, how are you prepared to invest in creating or expanding the 20% that this candidate may not be bringing in the door with them for purposes of diversifying your team? And I think that statement honestly holds true whether it's a question of gender or even just company background. In tech, we like other tech, and we like usually a very specific subset of other tech. And so there's even a bigger issue at play, which is you cannot create a fully homogenized group through your recruiting decisions that then stifles creativity, stifles innovation. That's going to stifle growth. Korn Ferry wrote a great article a couple of years ago called The Reference Man, and it talks about how very kind of single-minded teams have created technologies that were not inclusive because there wasn't a left-handed person in the room when it was being designed, or there's a whole array of ways to define diversity when you're recruiting. As a recruiter, you've got to be a consultative partner to your leaders to help them think through the value of some level of investment in talent that they are looking at to hire to create and achieve that diversity. And that's what creates more opportunity for all. So to the last question, I do not believe that it's a zero-sum game, but you've got to be willing to invest in creating diverse teams to drive growth that then creates future opportunity.
That's amazing. I have a question for you, Shikha. Should we reach out to hiring managers on social media for career guidance?
Shikha, you're muted. We can't hear you. Yeah.
We still can't hear you.
Is the answer that they go on mute? Sorry.
Nope.
No. You're still on mute. Is there a way to unmute her? Can we unmute her?
Oh, yeah. See.
I think we can mute people, but I don't think we can unmute people. Oh, I could mute her. Yeah, I can't unmute.
Siddharth?
Yeah, I think Rubina wants to answer a question.
Yeah, I was actually going to say while she's filling or finishing that, thought process, I'd love to hear from Rubina on kind of like the flip side. So Stacie talked about the bias coming from the recruiter, and I'd love to hear from Rubina about the potential bias from the hiring manager who is interviewing the candidates who are returners.
Yes, thanks, Kate. So, when we started the program and we wanted to hire women, who had been on a career break, initially hiring managers were very apprehensive because they were like, we don't have the patience, or we cannot wait for them to scale up, or, there was a lot of apprehension to begin with. So, even we started with a small number, and it always happens that, when someone is given an opportunity, they go above and beyond. When someone doesn't have something and then they're given an opportunity, they always tend to go beyond to prove themselves. And that's what happened with the first batch of women, whom we hired. They all outperformed, and that gave confidence to hiring managers. So the second phase of the project, when we ran it, there were so many more hiring managers who wanted to hire from that pool because they had seen what women returnees can do to prove their potential. And I think that took care of itself, and all the bias that was existing in the first run after seeing, how they perform, that all vanished. And that was proven by the double number of, opportunities that were open in the next phase of the project. And still people are now wanting to hire women from the returnee pool. So I think it's just, the first run that hiring managers need to see, and they will come to believe.
So I think I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So that's a quick reminder of what life used to be like when you worked. Things can go wrong. So to answer your question and to build on what Rubina said, I think my perspective has been my experience has been a little bit different, because I have more or less most of my career in traditional consumer goods companies, whether it's selling a beverage or it is selling a toilet cleaner. And in that experience, what I found was that the hiring managers seem to have a lot more bias than maybe a tech company or maybe an organization that's more creative. And the biases were things like, if women have not been a part of the workforce for an actual period of time, and if they've taken a long break, will they be able to go back out there and sell the product? Or will they be able to be in the market now that they're a mom? Do they have the time to do the consumer interactions, the customer interactions? Especially in the consumer industry, you have distributors that are very rough around the edges, and you need to handle them with care. Then the bias comes, oh, you know what, a woman will not be able to deal with them. Then in India, you have the additional challenge of, there are areas where I will not recruit a woman. I will not recruit a woman in a state like Bihar, which is traditionally a little bit unsafe for women. So where I found Rubina's thought process really resonating with me also was that we started small and we said, hiring manager, take a bet on 3 people in an organization. If you find that those 3 people have served the purpose, have given back to you more than what you expected, we'll make it bigger the next time. And that's exactly what we did. So I was the first returnee for the organization. They got me in, saw that, oh, you know what, this actually works. And so we got another 6 in. After that, we got another a few more in. So it's an augmented increase, but a lot of that also happens with just constantly communicating with the hiring manager. So like Stacie very correctly said, I mean, what are you willing to what are you willing to build on with training, with upskilling, and what are you not going to negotiate on at all? And that's completely genderless, because certain things are non-negotiable no matter what gender you are. But certain things you'll say, oh, you know what, if a woman returnee comes back, to go to a distributor, there'll be another male person who'll accompany her. And you're willing to take those measures. So that's really how, at least at our end, we manage the hiring manager. And as now today, when I'm coming back to the workforce, I want to return back. That's the same thing I'm doing again with prospective hiring managers, communicating to them and saying, take a bet on one person, take a bet on me. This is what I bring to the table. And then you can always, augment from there.
Absolutely. The clock is on the hour, but there is a final comment that I want to share. It says that gender is not binary, and diversity and inclusion should place prime focus on creating opportunities and affirmative action for the LGBTQI communities, even more than the 2 mainstream binary genders. And I couldn't agree more. These conversations are for all genders. In fact, the Reboot Talent arm of our partnership with Mindlands in the US is not specific to women returners. It's for everybody across, people of color, people from LGBTQ communities, veterans, and more. So yeah, but that's all we have time for now. Clearly, there is a thread that is resonating across issues, and it's very difficult on Women's Day to have a conversation on women returners and say, hey, this is what we're going to only talk about, because so many of these biases, and as Suraj mentioned, they're cultural, though I do think that society's culture does seep into what we believe to be corporate culture. And so many of these biases are common, they are prevalent, and we bring them back home, which is probably the reason why, Shikha, the hiring managers that you mentioned who said that, oh, these are returners, will they be able to sell, is possibly coming from mindsets from their own families. Maybe they've seen their mothers who've been in these roles, and you believe that once a woman is in that role, she probably can't come back and do justice to a professional work environment. So it's a long battle ahead, but we will be at it. I hope we can continue to have more of these conversations. And with that, I say a big thank you to all of you, Stacie, Rubina, Shikha, Suraja, and my dear host, Kate, and everyone else tuned into this Genderlogue. I do believe that an open dialogue and conversations between all genders are necessary, and they're a foundation for creating a bias-free future where everyone can feel that they belong and that everyone is included. Thank you so much. Over to you, Kate.
Yes, thank you so much for all of our panelists today, my co-host Anupama. For all of our attendees, please connect with these leaders on LinkedIn, follow their contents, learn more about their roles and the work that they do every single day. If you have any inquiries and you want to share your feedback, suggestions, please write to us at Reboot Talent. The email is info@reboottalent.com. And for Reboot Her, please email at reboot.net.in. So again, thank you so much for everybody. That's all we have for today. Happy International Women's Day and Women's History Month. I appreciate everybody here. Thanks again, you guys.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.